So here I have my photo all gridded. This one's printed, you don't have to print it. Then I have my paper that's gridded as well. And now I'm going to look at where these shapes fit into these grid lines. So I'm looking at the top of this ear, and I'm looking at where it intersects with the side of that top box. So I'm looking at halfway down. Does it go halfway down? Not quite. Is it half of halfway, which would make a quarter? Maybe so. I'm also looking at where that line will end, where it intersects on the bottom side of that box. And I make myself a couple little marks just to give myself some guidelines. So it's kind of like connect the dots. I'm going to connect those lines, and then I'm looking at, okay, where does the next line end in that next box? Where's my next contact point for my grid? Make a little mark for myself. I always like to divide my boxes in half again, just with little marks to give myself more points of contact. I'm going to look at the other side of that ear, that shape, and figure out where that hits. It hits about the corner of that next box over. Looking at the next line and where it hits, it's about halfway up that next box and starts to flatten out at a diagonal. It continues to curve around, and I'll just follow that box by box around the perimeter. Now sometimes you get into detailed areas like an eye or some of these busy stripes on this tiger, and it's hard to put that into a big square. So I'm going to divide this square in half both ways on the photo and on my paper. And you can do this if it's still on the computer, you can do it visually or print your picture and you can use that. So now it gives me more points of contact to see where these lines and shapes intersect with my grid. So I'm going to make myself some marks. Does it go halfway? Is it more than halfway? Less than halfway? I give myself little tick marks just so I know where I'm shooting for before I draw my line. I'm just following that shape around. I'm trying to keep my brain thinking shape instead of eye, because remember, your brain likes to try to label things and tell you what it's supposed to look like. But if you just think circles and arches and lines, it's a little bit easier. So again, your grid just gives you some points of reference to draw and connect your shapes to. You can work your way all the way down. You can work your way from the center out. Key is, if you're not going to start at the top and work your way down, make sure you count the number of boxes to make sure you're in the right place. Another tip for a small area, if your brain is getting confused or it's hard to look at all of this at one time, take some scraps of paper and cover up everything except for the one box that you are working on. So I'm just taking scraps. You can tape them together or you can leave them loose, it's up to you. And that helps me just focus on that one box. Now if I really need to, I could even move these in and focus in on one of those tiny boxes since I divided it again. So I can go way tiny and then my brain can focus on that just a little bit easier. One more trick is sometimes it's easier for your brain to abstract those shapes and draw the shapes if you turn it all upside down. It keeps your left brain from trying to label things and make you think you know how to draw them, and lets your right brain focus on just the shapes and lines. So I'm looking at a little teardrop shape in this nose area. It's really just some, like this little blobby is smaller than this little blobby, etc.